Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Not Quite Strangers. My name is Valerie Hope. I'm the host of this podcast, and I also on the side do leadership coaching, professional speaking. And this podcast was really inspired by a conversation I had a couple years ago to get people, strangers specifically, having more meaningful conversations. So hopefully this episode will help you to inspire your own curiosity about the people around you, will shift your perspective. Sometimes our minds change when we talk to new people, and then obviously establish connections. And today we have some very special guests. This is what I'm going to call my money episode. This is money. And the reason I say that, I'm going to start off by introducing Marcia. Marcia, you and I met in July or so of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us were part of a course through Heroic Public Speaking. And it so happened that we were both doing our speaker reel recordings, and we connected through there. And I remember your message about getting people to do angel investing, and especially women, and how empowering the message was. So then you and I ended up connecting again because we're both taking a writing course with the same editor from the Heroic Public Speaking. And we've been like accountability partners ever since. So I'm so grateful that you said yes to being on the podcast.
Yeah, this is great.
Cool. Awesome. And then I thought, who would I introduce Marcia to? Like, what would make this a great conversation? And I already had in mind Romone, because Romone, you and I met in October of 2022, because you're working with some of my coaching clients on their own financial moves, right? And somehow I remember you and I we were sitting next to each other on the bus, and I can't remember exactly all the details of how we got to this point in the conversation, but you shared about your passion for also getting young people, right, more educated around making financial decisions.
Right.
And from that, it led to you actually doing coaching sessions for my 14-year-old niece, who I think is going to be a mogul. I'm setting her up so she doesn't forget me in her will, but the other way around. But you were so wonderful with her, and she's learned so much, and she's now on Fundrise and Robinhood, and she's doing some stuff.
Wow, good for her. Yeah, that's great.
I was like, okay, these two people, and your commitment to young people, Romone, and Marcia, your commitment to empowering women about financial issues and challenges and goals. And I thought this would be a great matchup. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
What made y'all say yes? Besides the fact that I was the one to ask you, what made you say yes to doing something like this?
Well, for me, number one is because you asked me to do it, and we have the MLT relationship, and also, as you mentioned earlier, I assisted with Lucy, your niece, and then two, it's fun to do this and connect with new people, different people, and I just throughout my career, my working career, and even just growing up, I always learned to say yes to things and give it a shot. So here we are.
Say yes to things. Cool.
I love that. Yes. Say yes. I love talking to new people and finding out what they're doing, especially if it has something to do with helping young people, or I'm really hot on helping women, people of color get access to capital. That's really what I've been working on for the last couple of years. And so I was really excited when you asked me to come on.
Yes. And actually, I was thinking back, I don't think, and at least not in a meaningful way, I don't think I've had a conversation around money in the podcast. We've talked about a lot of other things, but money has not come up, at least not this way. So I'm really excited because it is an area that I've had to do a lot of personal work on, right? I would say something like, I was on a panel recently where we had to talk about entrepreneurship. And one of the things I said, I never heard this when I started my entrepreneurial journey 6 years ago, but the first thing that I needed to do was heal any money wounds.
I like that. I like the way you say that.
Yeah. Healing money wounds. And for me, what that looked like is I was kind of indifferent. Money was always a sense of a point of tension in my family when I was growing up. And so I was just like, don't even worry about money. Don't talk about it. Don't look at it. Let it go. Let it do its thing. But that's also very irresponsible as a business owner. So among other things. So I realized that I needed to kind of heal that relationship I had about it. And actually now I'm friends with money. I'm friends with my money, and I've done I have great resources that help me do that. But I love the way the two of you really connect to how to support and help people with money in a lot of different ways. So I'm curious about, where was your start? Like, did you have a money wound? Is this what this came out of? Or like, how did you guys start this journey?
Well, I will say that people's relationship to money is very, very interesting to me. A lot of it has to do with how you're brought up. It could also just be the way that you are. Like, for example, I know that I am like a saver, and so I'm more careful, where other people might not. They may be more spendy, like my husband, for example.
We usually meet the opposite, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's important that people keep talking about it. And I don't think we talk about money enough. I think that we need to talk to our children about how they use money, what it means to make money, what it means to save money, and what it means to pay things forward. Because paying forward is not necessarily always just with money, of course, but it does add to our generosity. And even the smallest thing, like paying for somebody's Starbucks coffee, can be huge at just making somebody's day, making somebody feel better. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do there that we aren't really talking about, because money is sometimes taboo. And you're right, that people do have wounds. And yeah, they feel like, oh, I shouldn't say that, or I shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, there's a sense of shame around it, or there's a sense of entitlement around it. Like all of those things, there's some sort of ego trip about money.
Yeah, if you don't have enough money, then you're judged. If you have too much money, you're also judged. So it's kind of like, well, where's the happy medium? And then the people who have money are looked at like, well, you shouldn't have all that money, you should give it away. And I mean, so it just goes on and on and on. You can go in a downward spiral thinking about it.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Ramon, what about you?
Yeah, I'll chime in and say, growing up, I didn't have much money at all. Growing up in a single family household, a single parent household, I should say, with 4 other siblings, I guess I had wounds before I even had money, right? So, we didn't have much at all. And so I didn't know anything. I didn't know the basics of money. I didn't know about savings accounts, checking accounts. I didn't know much at all. And so when I did get money, I just wanted to spend it on materialistic things. And no one taught me if that was the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. So I just did it. And so that stuck with me, I would say, even up into graduation from college, right? Like I was just a spender. I wasn't a big saver until like 3 or 4 years after college. And then I started to transition.
Interesting. Well, look at that. I attracted a spender and a saver. Or reformed. I guess you guys are reformed now. I don't know. I gotta say, and I'd love to hear each of you maybe have a story that was maybe an aha or some revelation about your own journey in money, or even well, let's start with your own first, and then we'll talk about what you like to do with other people. I remember going to a party, I don't know, maybe 15 years, 12 years ago. And I met this guy, he and I were dancing. It was great conversation. And then he's like flexing, right? So he's like, I got this house and I have this boat and I'm going to work in a boat and I've got this new car. And he's telling me about all this stuff. And I was just like rolling my eyes, in my head, I was rolling my eyes, not in front of him. But he was sharing all of these financial moves that he'd made. He was an entrepreneur, had multiple streams of income and all that stuff. And I was judging him hard. And I was not impressed. And then I was at the time working at a corporation. And so he came after you should work for the corporation because you're working for the man. And they're going to take your money. They have control over you and you should be your own boss and all this stuff. And I was so angry. And as angry as you could be at a party with a stranger. So of course I didn't show it. I didn't say anything to him, but we just never danced again. But he left me thinking. And the next day I was still steaming about it. In fact, I talked to my brother my older brother, and I said, I don't know why, but this guy really got under my skin. So my brother started asking me some questions, and I was like, I think what I got to eventually was that he was so clear about his values and what he thought was important around money and his financial philosophy, and I wasn't. I felt okay about what I was doing, but I didn't have a way to articulate it. And I think that's what made me really uncomfortable. I thank him to this day because that moment, that interaction set me off on a path that I would not have imagined. I'd been dragging along all my student debt for years at this point. I found Dave Ramsey, or Dave Ramsey found me, however you want to say it, when I was ready. And I got onto the whole debt snowball whole thing. I paid off my debt. I worked with a financial coach. I mean, it was like a whole process after that experience. Started doing investing. I mean, now it's been 10 years or so since that experience, but that taught me so much about myself, and especially in such a challenging, uncomfortable moment. So I'm curious, what's a story that you could tell us, tell each other, of a moment where you had an insight and aha about yourself, about money, about any of those things?
Ramone, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. For me, as I mentioned, after I graduated from college, I went to go work at Ernst & Young, global accounting firm. And those type of firms, the big four firms, they do a great job of educating their staff, especially their young associates. And I was at a workshop, I believe we were in Chicago. But anyways, we're somewhere in the Midwest at one of their workshops, and they were talking about personal finances and talks about personal, individual tax accounting. And then at that moment, I was thinking, wow, throughout college, I learned a lot about accounting, but I just never learned so much about wealth accumulation, right? And so at that moment, I realized I should start educating myself about accumulating wealth and not only saving, right? Saving is good to have for emergencies or large expenditures later on in life, or if you need it for an emergency. But I believe that we should be building our wealth and proactively doing that. And so I start taking classes and looking online and reading books about that. And years ago, one of my mentors named Rex Holland, he gave me a book by Benjamin Graham called The Intelligent Investor. So I took that book out of my closet, start reading it. So I start educating myself, I would say, probably 2 or 3 years after college. Mm-hmm. And then one more thing about that. When I was working at Ernst & Young, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and do something in the sports world. So I, kind of connected both of those passions, which led me to my company now. But while I was doing that, I built a relationship with the FDIC. The chairman at the time was Martin Grunberg, and he talked to me about their Money Smart financial education program. And so once I learned about that program, I just really, jumped in and learned as much as I could about financial education. Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on what happened, what's happening right now with Silicon Valley Bank?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
What are your thoughts on what's happening with Silicon Valley Bank right now then, and the FDIC, if you had kind of a history there?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with everything going on there. But the FDIC, I always believe in the last, 10 years, I believe the FDIC have good leadership, right? And so I feel like they're going to do the right thing. Because I personally know Martin Grunberg, and I'm not sure who came right after him, but I know he spoke highly of that individual as well. So I feel like the FDIC will do what's right, in that situation. And at the end of the day, their job is to protect the consumer, right? So I feel like they will come to that conclusion and figure out how can they protect the consumer in that situation as well.
Yeah. What's your business now, Romone?
Yeah, so we do wealth strategy consulting for professional and collegiate student athletes.
Nice.
Yes. Cool. And I want to bounce that back off of you about the Silicon Valley Bank. What are your thoughts on that? And yeah.
Well, so I'm on the board of the Angel Capital Association. We're the professional society of angel investors in the US, and I chair the board right now. So we have gotten all weekend, the emails were just flying about what's going on and what to do. And there was a lot of stress over the weekend with especially the CEOs of the portfolio companies of these startups that were affected by having money at Silicon Valley Bank. We didn't know until this morning that that was actually going to be okay. We thought that at least up to the $250,000 FDIC insured
Right.
level, they'd be okay.
Yeah.
But I did read somewhere, I read so much over the weekend, I don't know exactly which source it came from, so forgive me, but I did read that 93% of the assets were actually not FDIC insured that were
wow.
at Silicon Valley Bank. So I talked to several founders who were very, very nervous, and people who thought maybe they could make payroll this week. It seems like, I mean, the market is still open. It's not closed yet. We don't know exactly, it's not the end of the day. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But it does seem like things are moving in the right direction. But a lot of other regional banks are being affected. Signature Bank was taken over this morning. First Republic is struggling.
Oh, wow.
With people just having confidence, and so that makes it challenging.
Well, the thing is, as you mentioned, the FDIC, they regulate, or they insure up to 250,000. But however, depending on the type of account, right? They're doing that for your savings and checkings, not for investment accounts. So hopefully investors, are aware of that.
So for those, by the way, for those who are not familiar, who may be watching this, whenever they watch it, two things. Could one of you share what the FDIC is? Maybe Romone, since you have a personal relationship with their former leader, and then Marcia, if you could share what exactly happened with SVB that people should know, just the high level.
Yeah. So FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the headquarters are in Washington, D.C., right across from the White House. Basically what they do is they insure your money in a bank up to $250,000, depending on what type of account you have, but that's typically what they do. And they're basically saying if something were to happen to your money in one of your checkings or savings accounts, they would make sure you get that back, right? However, as we were just talking about, if it's not in a savings or checking account, if it's a different type of account, like an investment account, that is not guaranteed, right? Because you're making an investment, there's risk involved there. So the FDIC is not going to guarantee that money.
Okay. And then the Silicon Valley Bank, Marcia?
Without getting into a ton of detail, there was a reason that Silicon Valley Bank needed to raise more capital. And when this kind of started to get word out on the street that this was going to happen, a couple of people started to pull their money out because they got nervous. And that created a mass exodus of people wanting to pull their money out all at the same time. So, I mean, I'm not an economist, and I don't know that I have a crystal ball or anything like that, but if people hadn't maybe been so hasty, this might not have come to quite the massive mess that it kind of is right now.
Thank you for that. I wonder, if you guys can speak to, especially the work that you do, right? Helping student athletes and helping women become more involved, engaged in angel investing. Because what you all basically pointed to is that sometimes money, in this case, the investment that people are making can be rooted in fear, or be shaken by fear very, very quickly. So I'm curious about what drew you, first of all, to work with such a maybe volatile area of humanity, right? A topic that has such deep emotional connections for people. What led you guys to do the work that you're doing now?
Well, I'll start by saying, one, growing up not knowing about this area, right? Not knowing about finances, about wealth accumulation, or even about savings. So just having the curiosity, right? And wanting to do the right thing to build my own personal financial foundation. And then lastly, last time I checked, financial education is only mandatory in 11 states in America, right? And you take one class and that's it, right? And so that's not enough to know about a 401k or a Roth, or the difference between the two, or how to build wealth, or the 7 streams of income, as we discussed before. So assisting others and making sure that they can build their financial foundation, right? Because where else are you going to get it, right? It's not like each college student is going to have a financial education class, right? And not every company is teaching their employees about financial education or the difference between a 401k or Roth or, so, just wanting to assist other people because I know it's not out there.
Mm.
I would totally agree with that. The amount of personal finance education that is given to kids nowadays is so little, like even in schools. To answer your earlier question, Valerie, I was very lucky that my dad would, he would teach me whenever he was paying bills. And of course, this is way before online banking. So he would sit down and every month he would have to, pay the bills, and he had a little box. And whenever he did it, he would ask me to come and sit next to him and watch him. And at the time, I was pretty young. And so I don't know that I really knew exactly what was going on, but he would show me how he would manage his checkbook and how he would budget to show that, we had, X number of dollars that we could spend, but we had to pay for all these things. And then we had maybe a little bit left over depending on the month. And then, how we would manage that, or if we wanted to save for like a family vacation, or if we wanted something like that. And so that really taught me that not to spend outside of my means, because that was his philosophy. And I guess because that's really all I was exposed to at that point, I thought, oh, everybody did that. And then I started to realize very quickly that that wasn't the case. And it's I think it's really hard when people aren't given that type of education. And to Ramon's point, if you don't know about things that can help you to manage long-term savings, like the difference between these types of IRAs and things that you can do so that you can start to pay yourself first. Because I find that if you're a family that makes, an average amount of money, and then your income goes up a little bit and your income goes up a little bit, somehow your expenses seem to always go up too. You kind of like grow into the amount of money that you're making with the amount of expenses, right?
Yeah.
And so if we could just figure out, like, if you do get like a raise or you got a bonus or something like that, could we start to take that money and do what Ramon's talking about, put it into an IRA or start to save so that you can start to generate wealth? That would be just a little bit, could be a huge shift in how people are thinking.
It's interesting. There are these two different thoughts that I was not even in preparation for our conversation today, because I didn't do any preparation, but it so happened I joined the mentoring group around money with Ken Honda, who's a Japanese multimillionaire, and he talks about happy money. So he's the one that did a course that helped me get, he's all about money EQ, not just money IQ. And in the mentoring session that I was listening to, the replay, one of the questions that a participant had was around, they wanted to start a new business or something, and they were kind of uncertain about it. And they couldn't manage a budget. They were having a hard time staying within their budget. That was the question. But they did have a business on the side and were not really generating that kind of income. And one of the things he said is that even when we start getting a lot of the money IQ, right, information, so much of it is focused on how to save or how not to spend. And he says, but very few talk about how to make it, how to make money.
Yeah.
And he was telling her, you have a business. How creative can you get so that you can make more money? Therefore, you'll have, and it was just like,
yeah. A lot of it is changing your mindset, right? Like that's like, as we were talking about earlier, like most people think about save, or like that's just one component. And on top of that, you can even make money while you save, right? If you can, like some people put their money in a regular savings account. What if you could put it in a high yield savings account? And so you're yielding even more interest. So even when you save, you can earn, right? And so just shifting that mindset of like save, okay, but also like actively invest so you can increase your wealth. And that's where a lot of people are misled.
Your reactions, Marcia?
No, I completely agree, because like an IRA is a good example, since we were just talking about that. You can put money into an account and it can grow tax-free, and that's more money, making more money for you. And then, once you retire, you're in a lower tax bracket. Usually, it depends, but you can be. And then when you go to get that money taxed, it would be, so overall, it's a strategy, and I think that that's what people need to be thinking about. Like, we talk about planning for all kinds of things. I think we need to be planning for how can we have a strategy on being able to improve our wealth and get
a quick question on that. So you're talking about the IRA, right? So like you said, once you pull the money out later on in life, you're taxed on that. So what are your thoughts on converting, instead of having an IRA, to a Roth IRA? Because once you take that money out, you're not taxed on it at all. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fantastic, especially if you can do it like a little bit along the way.
Right.
If somebody has an IRA, like for example, usually what the typical thing that happens is people will have a 401k at their job, and then that accumulates money. And then if they leave that job, they convert it to an IRA.
Right.
If you then wanted to convert that to a Roth, ooh, that's kind of a hefty tax bill, especially if you're in your prime working years. Your tax rate's going to be a little bit higher.
Right.
By the way, I am not an accountant, and I do not I'm not claim to be one. Okay,
I'll put a disclaimer.
Personal experience. Yeah, let me just put a disclaimer out there.
So my background is in accounting, so I was just curious on where your
We're
thoughts.
We're gonna blame everything on Ramone today. Okay.
I was just curious. I really was just curious on your thoughts.
No, but I think it's great, because if you can do it, then you end up in a Roth. For those who aren't totally familiar with the difference between the two, but in a Roth, you're paying the taxes as it's being put in there. So it's after tax money, and that just grows. And
by the way, the taxability that you're talking about, where a lot of people do not convert, I believe mainly people do not do that because they believe that they need to pay all of that up front. But you don't have to pay all of that. When you convert it, you don't have to pay it all up front. Like you said, you can do it in installments. You don't have to convert everything at once. So do it when the time is right, or do it when the market is down, because when the market is down, your gain is probably lower. So
that's a very good point. When you convert, it does matter.
So talk a little bit about the projects you guys are most interested in and passionate about right now. Where are you putting this wonderful wealth, literal and figurative knowledge that you have?
You want me to go? So I did a TED Talk, a TEDx Charlotte. I was a speaker there in October of 2022. And in writing the speech and rehearsing it and talking to people, it was about how anyone can invest in change. And there were some rules that were changed by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, back in 2016, that allow anyone to invest in a startup company for as little as $50. And a lot of people don't know about this because it's so new. It's really only been around for a couple of years. And even though the rules changed, it wasn't like, everybody was talking about it and everybody just decided to go run and do it. There were platforms that had to be built, and lawyers had to figure out like what could really happen and not happen and all those great things. But it's starting to get a little bit of traction now, a little more mainstream. And part of what I really believe is that if we're going to start getting funding to diversity in general, I'm talking about all different kinds of diversity: gender, race, background, education, where you live, all of those things matter in building a company. You need to have diversity in order to make a great company. And the only way that we're going to get more capital into the hands of diverse founders is to have there be more diversity at the investment level. And so I'm really passionate about helping people get to know, not necessarily, sure, we can always talk about how to do it, but the why behind it. You can buy books out there right now on how to be an angel investor or how to invest in startups. And there's lots of articles that get posted, but there aren't a whole lot of people talking about why they do it. And I think that if we can start to bridge that gap, more people, like, why would somebody go out and read an angel investing book on term sheets or wanting to learn about term sheets? They have no idea, like, they would have no interest in picking it up until they thought about why they would ever be an angel investor.
So your why has to do with this idea of having more diversity, right? And also because it creates a kind of communities and types and helps serve the types of companies that could serve a diverse, even more diverse group of people. That's the why.
Right. Yeah, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the U.S. Amount of annual charitable giving that happens in 2020, for example, was $471 billion. That's a lot of money, but that's only equivalent to 1% of the value of the U.S. stock market. So if we want to affect real change, we can't expect that the burden be placed all on nonprofits. I mean, nonprofits are wonderful. We should keep donating and doing all the things that we've been doing. But we can't just think that all of the change that we want to see in the world is going to happen because of nonprofits. We need to help for-profit companies who are also making change. Those are the ones who are working on pharmaceutical drugs that we don't even know about, and they're coming up with different cool, innovative technology and things that can make our lives easier and our kids' lives easier and all that good stuff.
So you're saying for $50, I could be investing in AstraZeneca right now?
Well,
really?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I mean,
well, because of, with
I don't know about
investing
that.
platforms, you can invest in
That's
fractional shares.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But you're talking specifically about startups.
But I'm talking about startups. I'm talking
Yeah.
about equity crowdfunding, it's called. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Any questions around that, Romone, before we move to you? Questions or comments?
No, I agree with her point. I think it's great. And in terms of the investing and also who's investing, right? So having a diverse set of shareholders and partners, I think it's incredible. Yes.
Nice. All right. Romone, tell us what you're up to. What are you passionate about these days?
I'm passionate about many things. And in terms of financial education, right? So I've for the last, I don't know, 3 or so years, I've been on a tour, not a TED Talk tour yet, but I've been speaking to different colleges, student athletes at the Division I level and a few at the Division II level. And I love it, right? Because these college student athletes, especially now that they can make money from NIL, name, image, and likeness. And so I love going to speak to them in their team locker rooms or media rooms. So that's a lot of fun. And, we're dealing with some big time players and big time clients. And so that's a lot of fun. And we're educating them and answering questions. And more importantly, we're helping them start their, financial foundations or, build wealth, starting to build wealth. And so it's great. We're really changing lives, right? Doing that one, and then also continue to work with the young professional athletes who need some guidance from a financial standpoint as well. So in terms of financial education, those are the things that we're doing and having fun with. Yeah.
So why student athletes? What is it about that particular population out of all we're all missing the financial education that you're talking about. So why did you hone in on that group?
I don't know. There's many reasons why. A few are, I was a student athlete, right? So I played basketball collegiately at Florida State and then at American University. So I can relate to student athletes. I love sports. And I know for a fact that it's not easy being a student athlete and going to college, right? And on top of that, they're making money now. I mean, we have players who are making, college players who are making close to $1 million. Like we just finalized a deal with Buick under $500,000 with a few players, right? So they need to understand that they're making this money, but one, they need to pay taxes, right, on this money. And so they need to keep track of where that money's coming from, where it's going. And again, like to help them build wealth, right? So just getting it and saving it isn't enough, right? Mm-hmm. So let's make sure that you're making that money grow.
Yeah, got that. Okay. And Marcia, you mentioned women earlier. Is that your key demographic that you're hoping to diversify this investment world with?
Well, yeah, for sure. Right now, women get less than 3% of the venture capital dollars that are out there being given to startups, but people of color get less than 1%. So, and if you're a woman of color, you're really low on the list. So it's really bad. It's bad. And so, like, let's just use women, for example. Women are 50% roughly of the population. I really doubt that they only have 3% of the good ideas. I think they probably have more than 3% of the good ideas out there. So, I think it's important that we keep talking about this and get more women and people of color involved on the investment side, because it's the people who are writing the checks who are really the ones who get to decide where the money goes.
Mm. And what is it that you're noticing or learning about why there's still such a small percentage of women involved in this?
Well, I definitely think there's more women who are fundraising. It's just a matter of, like, are they able to get the capital?
Mm.
And, again, it's because the capital is being controlled by people who are giving it mostly to men, white men.
Mhm. Yeah, but I guess my question is more about, so if there's a woman that's watching this is saying, wait, I didn't know that. What does that mean for me? Like, what is it that's preventing me from moving in the direction that you're hoping more women move into, right? Like, what are you discovering about the everyday woman that could invest in a startup that maybe doesn't know that they could? Like,
Yeah, that's
me
probably the
2 weeks
biggest.
ago.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest hurdle, is they just don't even know that they can.
Mm.
I mean, even people who are, very wealthy, donate, lots and lots and lots of money to charity, have never heard of angel investing. And, when I see something like that, I think to myself, wow, if they are, that generous, maybe they could just take a little bit of money and also put it into, a startup, especially startup that was working on something that was very similar to, what charities work on, but in a for-profit space, so that, the company can grow.
I think one thing I'm picking up from the two of you as you're sharing your insights and your take is that even though you have this education now, you have the money IQ, right? And it sounds like you both also handle the money EQ piece. You are still making decisions, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're still making decisions about where you invest your time, energy, and your capital in places that you're passionate about, or with populations that you're passionate about. It's not just like this is a good money move, right? That's what I'm hearing. Is that right? Am I picking up the right thing here?
I would say so. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was all about just financial returns 100%, then you might want to be in a less risky asset class than startups. Startups can be pretty risky, but that's why you diversify your portfolio. I mean, that there's going to be risk. So there's lots of ways that you can couch that risk. So I think that, just being able to help and feel like you're doing something for good and you're getting a financial return, to me, that's like a double win. So, that's kind of why I'm like super passionate about being in this space.
That's cool. And Romone, you too. I mean, working with student athletes, you were one yourself, helping them with money IQ. Again, money, at least in my ears, not having the financial education that the two of you had, there's a lot of advice about the right thing to do, right? And it seems to be very binary. Like, this is good, this is bad, this is a good move, this is a bad move. But I love that the two of you are finding ways to do so, and then not just empowering, but in a way that makes you come alive, that you bring life to some of the places and the populations or the areas that you care about, which I think sometimes is missing when we're talking about money. It's like, this is a good thing to do, so do it. This is a good investment to make, so make it, rather than like find something you care about, right? Invest in something you care about. Ramon, what would you say to that?
About the part not only investing, but investing about something that you care about.
Yeah, being passionate about it. When you
Yeah.
were talking to Lucy, my niece, that
Yeah.
was something that you really stressed with her. Like, what are the
Right.
questions that you care about, right?
Well, I feel like if you do that, you may have more interest in doing it and more interest in following along and just learning as you go, and also not relying on someone else to do it for you, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a financial advisor, but maybe they can give you some guidance and some structure, but you should be involved in that process and also talk to them about things that you want to invest in and do not want to invest in, right? Do you want to invest in tobacco companies, or you want to invest in, other types of companies or not, so thinking about things like that, I think it's important. But I love the comment made earlier about diversifying, right? So investing in some startups, investing in some private companies, some public companies, rental real estate companies, and investing in yourself. Maybe there's some things that you can do that you can create some money from as well. So diversification, I believe, is key, because almost every investment is a risk, right? So nothing is a guarantee, right?
Yeah.
So you shouldn't put too much into one thing.
Okay, so I have started to listen to this guy, Ramit Sethi. You guys know him? Have you met him? Yeah. I don't know your thoughts on it, but I'm like, I've swallowed the blue pill or whatever. Or is it the red pill? I don't know. Which one is a good one? The red pill, right? He kind of
Okay.
he kind of brings a different approach. And I just bought his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he also has a great podcast. And in his podcast, he's always talking to these people who want to have this great life, but somehow when he breaks down their psychology behind what they want to do with money, it seems to be never aligned with what they truly want. But he has specifically these money rules. And I'm curious, as we're coming to the end of our time together, I want to explore this idea of money rules. And for example, one of the money rules he talks about was if he has to be on a flight that's longer than 4 hours, he'll upgrade to business class. Like, that's his money rule for his income or whatever, right? But he says all of us should have money rules, specifically because he said you shouldn't wait to experience the fulfillment of having money till you have a certain number. He said you should always find ways to help you feel fulfilled with the money that you have.
I like that.
And which I thought was really cool. And I'm like, now I need to come up with my money rules. So I need some inspiration. What money rules do you guys have, if you've thought of that?
I have one that we also mentioned earlier, is just the simple concept of paying yourself first, right? And this is what we name our financial workshop or experience, is paying yourself first. Every time you make money, you take 30% and then you put it into your different savings and investment accounts. That's what I do personally. That's what I like to do. So if you have $1,000, you take 300 and invest that in your savings, investment, whatever. Every time you get money, every time you get paid, take 30%. So you still have $700 left to do whatever you want to do. Right? Imagine if high school students can start doing that when they don't have bills.
Yeah.
And imagine then taking that same concept when you go to college. And then when you start making money when you're a professional and you live by that, you probably won't have to borrow. You can travel wherever you want. You can sit first class and all the flights on all the and invest in all the type of companies that
compound interest.
Yeah. So, I know it's harder as adults, but if you can get to a point where you can, automatically take a piece of the pie and invest that right away. One other thing, I read that the majority of high net worth individuals, they're investing 70% of their money, right? And then only spending 30%, right? So if we can kind of, again, shift that mindset of like, okay, let's invest more, and maybe spend less, right? So
yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Yeah.
Just because the buffet is free, or all you can eat, don't go eat all you can, right?
and honestly, I'm going to be vulnerable here, and I'm going to say I'm not perfect about that, right? Because sometimes I want, something more expensive. I want to fly in first class. So, but I do try to at least save the 30% or save or invest at 30%. So then that 70%, like, I'm having fun with it and, I'm splurging a little bit.
That's really smart.
That is smart. And I started using the Profit First system by Mike Michalowicz about 3 years ago, which made a huge difference. And his philosophy is also pay yourself first, profit first. So anytime I have any income, that's going to be the first thing that I move into an account. And I'm still trying to figure out my own money rules for sure. But one of them I found that's specifically related to making money, because that's the thing. I realized that, again, a lot of the mentality is about how to spend or save. And I thought, no, I want a money rule around how I make money. And one of the things I wrote is I say no to work or activities that don't bring me joy or don't utilize my gifts and talents, which as an entrepreneur, I'm only 6 years in, but that for me has been so important, because I notice I work harder. I'm much more creative. I'm inspired. I go above and beyond when I have those types of projects. Whereas if I take projects just because of the financial, the compensation, and it would be like, I don't even want to do this, but oh, well, they're paying really good. Right. So money rule, nope, I'll say no to those and say yes to the stuff that I love.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. So I offer that to the general public if you want to take it. Anything, did you share your money rule, Marcia?
No. So my money rule has to do with time. If it can save me time, I'll, at times, it depends, but I would use it. A good example would be like if you have somebody come every once in a while and clean your house, that takes a lot of time. And if I can pay somebody else and actually help them, by their business, especially like this became a big thing for me during COVID. I had somebody who would come every month or whatever it was. It wasn't that often, but they would clean, and it was a husband and wife, and it was their own business. And as soon as COVID happened, everybody was home, they canceled on them. And they almost went out of business because nobody was doing it anymore. And I said, no, you can come more. Why don't you come to my house more? Okay. Because that, it was helping them, and it was saving me time, and to me, if I could save time, that would definitely help with money.
I like that. I agree with that. I do that sometimes too. But however, with a driver. So I'll get like an Uber driver instead of driving somewhere, because I can work.
That's right. Yeah.
While they're driving, and in traffic, I could probably send 2 or 3 emails and make some money, or do some deals or something when they're driving. So I like that concept, and I practice that often.
I like that too.
That's great. Yeah.
You just inspired me to add another money rule I didn't realize I had, and that is to spend my money on businesses and business people who are passionate about what they do, or not only good at it or popular, but like really passionate too. That's the other thing. I'm like, if I'm going to do work that I'm passionate about and I do it above and beyond, I want to invest in people that do that too. So money roll. Yay. All right. In the last 10 minutes or so we have together, I'm curious, what has this conversation been like for you? What was surprising? What was interesting? What was, any of that?
Well, I love learning about what Ramone's working on. I think that it's awesome. It reminds me, there's a company I know of that it's called Scout, and they have, it's mainly for younger people so that they learn to maybe not get the extra latte and take the $5 or $4 or whatever it is, put it into their investment savings. And then over, a period of several days, months, whatever, they accumulate some money, then they can go invest. But what the whole hook of the app is that they align with sports figures that already have a portfolio built. So you can invest and then you just fill in the name of the sports figure, because their portfolio is made up of blah, 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 blah. And so I just thought it was such a cool concept, because it was encouraging people to invest. They already are seeing people who are investing, and they're, seeing like a role model. And at the same time, they're figuring out these little tiny tricks that they can do in order to help get their money to work for them. So, and Romone, that's kind of what you're doing, like in real life.
Yeah. An easy way to think about what we're doing is educating and helping them apply, right? So education and application.
Yeah. Yeah,
100%.
that's great.
Yeah.
Romone, what about for you? Any interesting surprises during our conversation today?
I agree. I just enjoy doing this and learning about a new person and just diving in, and also, having her ask me questions, right? Like challenging questions or questions that I haven't thought of recently, or, so I think it's good and it's fun. It's good to kind of sharpen your craft and stay sharp. So it's wonderful. And on top of that, I hope that we can connect in some capacity. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think
Well,
there's some
plus,
synergy.
I do find that people, I talk about, money or funding or helping entrepreneurs how to get money, but we don't talk about like, money EQ like we have been today, which is kind of a cool topic. And I think
agree.
people need to talk about that more. I think, yeah,
Most
really,
of us are not even aware of it. The whole idea is that, are we a slave to money, or we are feeling that we're a master with money? And master, not like we're good at it, but master as in there's entitlement. Like, if I have money, then I need to spend it. Or I need to earn the certain type of money. Like, all of those types of emotions are generally pretty disempowering in the background, right? And the slave to money, like, oh, I don't think I'll have enough, like any negative talk we have about it. And this guy, Ken Honda, what he talks about, it kind of brings like a Zen Buddhist approach to it. Is that we should be friends with money. We should be grateful for the things that money provides for us. So are you paying your bills with like some sort of resentment about having to pay them, where you could be grateful that, hey, I'm so glad I have lights and I have heat, or I have air conditioning, or that I'm able to put gas in my car with this money that I have, right? And I was just like, yes. That whole perspective really shifted, I think, a lot of things for me. So really bringing more gratitude to what money does, because it's an exchange of energy. And the more we charge the money that we give, we send with energy, the easier it is to come back. So all of those things. So I love it. I love the message. And I'm so grateful that the two of you wanted to come on and say yes to this. I do have one last question. I'm like, man, how did I forget to ask this? Can we ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay. This one might be a little bit controversial, because I know that I have these conversations about money. But there are very few people in my life, including family, with whom I can have these conversations. So I'm curious about your family, either family of origin or your adopted family, or whoever it is, the people that you consider family and friends. How do you talk about money with people who may not share your philosophies or values?
Go ahead, Jerome. Or Romone.
That is a great question. And I believe it's case by case, depending on who you're talking to, right? It's funny, I was just talking to my mom yesterday about money. And then it's a little different than talking to my nephew about money. So, just kind of seeing where they are, right? Especially for someone with my background. I have first of all, I'm passionate about it, have a deep understanding. I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
But, so just trying to educate a little bit, slowly but surely, and also talk about some of the things that I'm doing personally, right? Because if you can say, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is how I've benefited from that, and showing that, then maybe they may want to mimic that. Answering questions. And it's not easy, because sometimes, you feel like you know it all and you just want to say, hey, change and do this. But that's not easy, to just have someone change, because they don't know, they don't understand, or probably haven't done the research or seen the results. So you have to be careful, but you definitely have to talk about it, and be comfortable talking about it, and be patient and open and vulnerable. So, but I believe that we definitely have to talk about it, though, in the household. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. That's so important. Just like I said, my dad was very good about talking to me about it and very open. And so I feel like I got that sense of, it's okay to talk about it with your family, and to be able to just kind of see where everybody is.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, because if there is a lack of money, or if there's something, like some emergency comes up and it's, a bill that you weren't expecting, or something that, one person values more than another in a household. that needs to be paid, that can cause a lot of animosity.
Yeah.
But talking through it and, being able to just have an open conversation, a lot of the time, to your point, Valerie, earlier about, being grateful that you can, pay your rent. You don't, it's not like you have to, it's that you get to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
100%. Wow. So good. Where can people find, where are the books? What's your link? I obviously will put all this stuff in the show notes, but are there resources that you all either have or that you recommend that for anyone that wants to follow up on the conversation we've had so far?
Yeah, for us, we created a financial education platform. It's separate than our main website. So that's www.pursuitstream.com. And we just have general financial education information there. Some of it's free, some of it costs. There's activities, there's family activities, and just basic things and guidance that people can do. But another thing is, there's so much information on YouTube or on social media that you can find about building your finances and growing wealth and investing. So, if you search, you'll find something for sure. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. And I have a website. It's just marciadawood.com. You can find out about me. I will say there's a friend of mine who wrote a book called Activate Your Money. And it is about how to align your money and your values. And she has a different chapter about all kinds of things from the banking that you do, the spending that you do, the investments that you make. I know Romone said a couple times about do you want to invest in things that are good? You don't want to invest maybe in things like tobacco or, fossil fuels or whatever. Yeah, that's all in the book, which is kind of cool.
Okay. I'll put all that in the show notes in case people want to connect. And I'll also put your contact information. Well, not your phone number or your email, but I definitely put if you have a website or LinkedIn or something, or Instagram, that way people can connect or follow you. Very cool. Two things I learned. One is that I have a money rule about where I spend my money as well, which I was kind of implied, but I don't think I was ever conscious about it. And then the other one is, I think what you were just saying is having the show is almost like show versus tell, right? When it comes to stuff like this, I think I've been doing more telling about hey, do this or try this, or here's what I've read and here's who I've talked to, but more about show, here's what I'm doing and this is why, or here's the impact that I've had. You said, Romone. And I also didn't know that I could go to my financial advisor and say, hey, who is my money being invested in? And I'd like to change up some things. I want to make sure that these are the companies that I'm supporting. I had no clue I could do that.
Absolutely. It's your money.
Your money. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you outsource to a professional like that, you don't, I didn't know. I didn't know. So they better watch out. I'm coming. All right. Thank the two of you so much for taking time today. I know, Romone, you're hiding there in the LA library. Are they trying to kick you out yet?
No, they haven't yet.
No, that's pretty good that you're talking this out in the library. Whoever's on the other side of those stacks is probably getting a lot of education right now.
That's right. Yeah. They're going to be rich.
So you're in LA and Marcia, you're in North Carolina. And just thank you too for saying yes and sharing so openly your thoughts and ideas. If you have other resources that come to mind, let me know and I'll make sure that I add it in for all of our readers. Anything that you'd like to say to one another or to anybody that's been watching before we close?
Start now.
Agreed. The younger, the better.
There you have it, straight up.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this podcast episode, Not Quite Strangers. You'll hear where you can connect with us to make sure that you don't miss a single episode, but make sure that you favorite us or like us or rate us in your favorite app. That way you also know what's coming up. You get notified to anything that's any new episodes that we have coming out.
That's right. Show Valerie some love, y'all.
Yeah, show some love. Thanks for that. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Marcia and Romone, stay with me for just a moment while I to wrap up our conversation. But the rest of you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.